What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the 96 YZ125 build. So I got the bike behind me here. I've done a few things to it, like off camera, a couple of small things. It's nothing that needs to be filmed or whatever. So I just went ahead and put a couple of parts on the bike there. So in the last video, you see me kind of torque everything down as far as the engine goes. Now I just got to start putting the rads on and things like that. I went ahead and put the electrical back on. And I got the kill switch hanging here. I'm gonna put a new kill switch on it just because this one, I'm not sure where the fasteners went for it or if they were even there, so I can't remember. And I went ahead and put the clamps on and I powder coated them a semi-gloss black. So that's what I'm gonna be focusing on today, is getting the forks rebuilt and back on the bike here. So this will definitely be the focus of the video here, guys. I'm going to take these shocks apart. I actually did this one already. I just kind of went through it because these are just a little bit different. So I'll go through the differences from this to like a Showa or whatever. In this particular model, they have a different kind of fork. So it's not really a big deal, but it's just some slight differences and some little tips and stuff like that just to get you through it. So what you'll need is a 19 mil socket, but first you want to take your both your clickers on the top and the bottom and count how many clicks in, and then write it down, and then adjust it all the way out until it stops. You don't have to twist that hard. These things aren't that strong, so you just click it all the way out until it stops, and then it'll just be easier to fill everything with oil when you're refilling them. All right, so next thing I'm gonna do is put this in a vise. I got the clickers all the way out now. I'm gonna put this in the vise here with the soft jaws, and I'm gonna try and break this loose. This is a 19 mil nut on here. You wanna make sure you're using the proper size wrench, because that's how these get rounded like this. Might be a little bit difficult. When guys use something like a crescent wrench, or they use an open end and they struggle to open it, that's what happens. So you want to use the box end of a proper wrench when you're doing these. Make sure you get the proper one on there. And like I said, put it in some soft jaws, and if you're having trouble, put it back into the clamp and tighten it down, and then you should be able to break it free easier. All right, so I got the fork and the vise here now. So on these particular forks, they don't have any kind of a rod in there. So when you take this out, it's actually hooked onto a tube inside the inner tube here. So when you start turning this here is going to turn as well. So you need to back this up. It's just as simple as just holding it, or even you can just put a little bit of tension on it, and it should pull out of the threads. I actually like to break it free with like a breaker bar or something, like with a smoother pull. And then it's actually easier to do it with like an impact. But make sure you use the right size socket, or hex head Allen, which is a 14 mil. So I'll show you how I do that right now. And I'll do a quick edit here, guys. When you take this out, you are going to get oil spew out of here. So just make sure you got something there to catch it, or take it out of the vise, bring it down to your bowl or pan or whatever, and then continue taking it out, because you're going to have oil coming out of here. All right, so now that the fork tubes are all drained, now you'll just have the inner and the outer tube. So what you'll want to do now is you want to take this dust seal out. You want to pry it out with a screwdriver, and then there's a little clip inside there. You want to get that clip out, and then you'll be able to slide hammer the shock apart, or the fork apart. And sometimes you can just go ahead and do it cold, but it is easier to go ahead and heat this outside up a little bit. I'm just going to do it cold because most times it just comes out of there. But if you're having a bit of an issue with any forks, you might want to heat this up a little bit. Sometimes it kind of helps you get it out of there. So now you got the outer tube off. So now you're going to want to get all your bushings off. So they're easy enough to get out. You just watch for these splits here, and then you split them open, and then it should slide right off. It's hard to do it one-handed here, it's all full of oil, but just like that. And then you just put them on the paper towel in the order that they come off of there. It's just easier to keep track of it. This is the seal that has been leaking right here. So this little groove right here always goes oil side in, so it goes up on the fork. And this flat part needs to go down because this needs to be pounded on when you put the seal back in. So if you're ever confused, just this groove goes oil side all the time, and this goes down so you can hit it. And this washer right here came out in this particular way. It came out with like the rounder side facing down towards the bottom of the fork and the flat side facing up. And this is the clip you have to take off before you slide hammer this all apart. Sometimes the kits come with these, sometimes they don't. This particular one didn't. And then you got the dust seal. So that'll go back on first. So you just put everything in order, and then when you've got everything cleaned up, you just go ahead and take these two out of place and put the new ones in place. Then you can kind of remember where they're gonna go. And I am using the Tusk seal kit here. So I've already got one done, so these are open, but I'm gonna clean all these up good, and then clean this tube up really good with some contact cleaner, brake cleaner, whatever, and then start reassembling. All right, guys, I got everything pretty clean here. I got the inner tube nice and clean. I got the new seals in place where they're supposed to go. I got everything cleaned up here. So now what you want to do is, I've got this fork bullet, but what you can do is just take a piece of, out somewhere around here, some kind of piece of plastic. Like I've used this in the past. It works really well. You just wrap it around like this, and then you put the seals over it, and then it'll slide right over that, no problem. Because if you put it on with nothing over this groove, you can actually cut your seal. So you want to use a fork bullet or something like that. I've even cut up a clear Solo cup in the past and put that over, and that works really good too. Anything just for a smooth transition over this groove here. But other than that, it's time for me to start reassembling this fork. All right, so now you got all this on. So you got your bushing, this bushing, there's two bushings here, the washer, seal, and then the clip, and then the dust seal. You've got all this on now, so now it's time to put the outer tube back on. And now you can use a seal driver. It's probably the best thing to use, but I actually made this driver out of PVC pipe that I cut in half. It actually works really well. So you want to keep working your way around the seal until you have the groove exposed that this clip seats in. And you'll know if you got it right, because when you push this clip in there, it will click. You'll hear a click as you push it in with a screwdriver. If you're not hearing that, it means it's not seated correctly. So you got to make sure you keep smacking the seal in until this goes in properly. So you definitely might have to work on that a little bit, especially if you don't have the proper correct seal driver. But when you're done and you think you've got it to where this clip here can go in, you squeeze the clip until it gets in there, and then just make sure when you push it in, you hear that click. If you don't hear that click, it means that that is not going into the groove. And if it's not in the groove,
then your fork is going to fall apart. So you don't want that. So make sure you got that little guy in the groove there. So usually what I do with this dust seal is you can either like just push it all the way down to the end of the fork and just jam it in, or you can just like give it a little bit of oil right here. Give it a little bit of oil. Oftentimes you can almost just press this right in. Sometimes it'll need a little bit of help, but they go in just like that. So now your all your seals are replaced. So now you can go ahead and put the guts of it back in there and start tightening everything down. So I've got this pretty well cleaned up. So now you just go ahead, just give one last wipe here. Then you just go ahead and just shove it down in there. I'll go in the outer tube, and then you kind of gotta finagle it a little bit to get it into the inner tube there. So now you'll get it down to the bottom. So now what I'll do is I'll thread it just a little bit, and I'll show you why in a second here. All right, so now that you got all that in there, you go ahead and you can push this outer tube down until it seats against the bottom here, because you need this piece right here where the threaded area is. That's where this has got to go into. So what you'll do is actually unthread this, and then you can actually push that down if you want to. And then what you'll do is grab this and kind of bend it down just a bit, just to jam it. And you start threading that into there, and by jamming this, you're backing it up. So what I do is the manufacturer calls for 40 foot-pounds, but what I actually do is just use my 1/2 inch impact and just give it a little zap, because it's just a heck of a lot easier to have a tool that'll just zing that cartridge right back in there. But what I'll do is I'll use a hand tool to get it to the point where it's threaded in enough where I know it's not going to cross thread, and then I'll use the impact after that. So when you're putting the oil back in these, you got to collapse it all the way down, so that's all the way to the bottom here, and then you fill the whole outer tube up until it's about level with the outer tube, and then you just work it up and down just in a smaller stroke. It said the service manual says under 200 millimeters. So what they're saying that for is so if you pull it up too far, you might get more air into the system. So you keep working the air out of it, and then when the air stops, then you take. It's a good idea to have a something like this, like a syringe or whatever. I've actually marked a black mark right here. So I'm going to stick this into the black mark like that, and I'm going to suck out until it's 135 millimeters from the top of the outer tube here. So it's good to have one of these around. If you don't, you can kind of dump it out little by little, and use if you want to use like a piece of thin cardboard or something like that, like a off a beer box I've used before, and just cut it into strips and just dip it down until you get the tip wet or whatever, and then you can kind of gauge from there how much is in there. But this is the easiest way I find to do it, is just fill it up, bleed the air, and then suck it out until it gets to that mark. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, so I got it filled to the point where it's pretty much to the top of this, and there's no more air bubbles coming out. So what I'll do with this is I put it in until this line hits here, and then I'll draw on this until it starts to suck air. Then I know it's down far enough. So we'll put the tube right down in there. Pretty well in there now. Last little bit doesn't really want to go in. Probably caught on the spring or something down in there. There we go. In there now. So now you just draw it out. Should be able to see it go in there. Get my bowl. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to waste a little bit of this. So now you take the tube off for just a second, and then you reset your syringe. Then you plug it back into there, and then you keep pulling on it until you start to get air out. You have to do this a few times before you actually get air in the system. There you go. So that is at about 135 millimeters of. The oil is now 135 mils from the top, so that's what they call for. So now that you got all that done, you can put your syringe away, and then you can close up the fork at that point. All right, guys, so now that you have everything back together, you can go ahead and set your clickers back to what you started with originally. If you don't know, just go into your owner's manual and see what they say for factory settings. And then when you're done with that, you can go ahead and put them back inside the clamps. And then you can torque them to 22 foot-pounds is what the torque spec for the cap is.
That's going to be it for this video, guys. This video is just about rebuilding this particular set of KYB forks that come on this 96 125. So in the next video, I'm going to definitely start putting everything back together. And in the meantime, I'm going to do it off camera because I have an extensive video on how I do this. I'm going to do my wheel set there. I'm going to break them down, powder coat them, and build them back up. So if you want to see those go back on the bike, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you found value in this video. And as always, thanks for watching.